Welcome to the Author Corner, our chance to meet the authors you'll want to read. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so delighted to be joined today by author Linda Maria Frank. She's the author of The Buccaneers of St. Frederick Island and the Annie Tillery Series. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me, Stephanie.
I am thrilled to have you, and wow, we are just surrounded by fabulous books here.
Yes, the studio did a really nice job
Oh
with them.
my gosh, well, the books are beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks
Yes,
for
that's
being
my,
here.
That's my illustrator, Marianne Savage.
Fabulous job. Well, before we dive into the books, how did you even get started? How does one begin writing a series, more books? I mean,
That's a good question. But basically, because I'm such an organized person, I was teaching forensic science, and on the high school level, and then finally on the college level. But when I taught on the high school level, my duty period was the library, and the library was very quiet, and I would take that time to write projects for my students, and they were really like little mystery stories, and they had to take the little mystery stories and they had to collect the evidence, research how the evidence would be processed by a forensics lab, and then they had to create a court scene a la Law and Order, and we had this court scene in our classroom. I was the judge, the class was the jury. The students could go and get their friends from the cafeteria to be expert witnesses, to be police officers, anything that they needed, and they would set up a crime scene. And it was so much fun that I was so glad that it was successful, because I had seniors, and seniors in their senior year really kind of, because your junior year in high school finishes you off. You have enough to apply to colleges and whatnot, so your senior year you're kind of floating through. So to get them to do something was...
well, this sounds like such a fun class.
But it was.
Wishing that I had this in high school.
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, they really made me laugh. They did some really crazy things. But then while I was in the library, some of the stories that I was writing I liked. Especially the one that became the basis for Girl with Pencil Drawing, because I love the forensics of art forgery.
Oh,
in fact, I do a lecture
yes.
on it in libraries. And because I like that science so much, I thought to myself, let me turn this into a book. Mm-hmm. And actually, it wasn't the first book I published. The first book I published in the Annie Tillery series was The Madonna Ghost.
Okay.
And I did The Madonna Ghost not from the standpoint so much of forensics, but because I used to have a sailboat, and I used to be in love, and I wanted to capture those two things before I forgot.
I like that. And I used to be in love.
And so, yeah, I used to be. And
spoken like a writer.
So I did. And that takes place on Fire Island, and there's a lot of sailing scenes in it. And there is a ghost, the Madonna Ghost. It has nothing to do with the singer. And actually, the plot in there is, and I wrote this before 9/11, the plot has to do with terrorism.
Oh my gosh.
And that's all I will say.
Okay.
So I did that one first, I guess, because I was anxious to capture. But then I went on to Girl with Pencil Drawing, which I really love that aspect of forensic science. And it's very glamorous.
Art forgery, wow.
Yeah, it's glamorous because Annie goes and she takes a series of art lessons in a Soho gallery, and she becomes kind of friendly with her instructor, who's a young artist. And the manager of the gallery is killed, and of course the instructor is the prime suspect, and so Annie has to prove her innocence, and they end up finding a ring of art forgers. And so I go into the whole way that art pieces are authenticated, and there's a lot in that book. And the backstory actually is what happened in Germany right after World War II, when the Nazis confiscated artwork from the Jews, and then the Monuments Men were a branch of the American military who tried to retrieve those art pieces and return them to who they belonged to. And I won't tell you more than that.
Oh my gosh,
it's a very romantic story. I think both of them are. I didn't think of them that way, but when I read them again, they are. So this one I had to go back and learn the subway.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, because at that time I really wasn't using the subway in the city. I do now.
Right.
Well, I not now, but you know, hopefully in a few months.
Yes.
But-
And then after, so this was written first, but this was published first. Interesting.
Well, the idea for a girl was
Gotcha.
first. And actually, because I didn't know anything about writing, I took a course in writing.
Oh, good.
So I took a course in novel writing. And boy, did I learn a lot, because, I mean, you can look at a novel and you can kind of copy what's going on there.
Right,
but,
right.
But this was really a course in writing and how to create a novel. And the second course that I took was the same idea, but also talked about marketing. So, which of course is very
Fantastic.
important. So Madonna Ghost came first, and then
Right.
Girl with Pencil Drawing came second, and then I put them aside. I wrote them, and the instructor I had said, "These are good, you could publish them." But it took me 7 years to publish my first book, and I said, and I put them aside for a number of years.
Wow.
And then I said, what happened was self-publishing became not Vanity Press anymore.
right.
It became more legitimate. And I didn't really want to send out to legitimate publishers. I shouldn't call them legitimate, traditional publishers, simply because I felt that I was too old. You know, I didn't want to wait to be discovered. I
Right,
was
right.
not too old, I was too impatient.
That's a better word for it. You were too impatient. Well, then tell me a little bit about, because this is such a fascinating series, the secrets in the fairy chimneys.
Okay, the cover of that book, the fairy chimneys are really, they're geological formations in Turkey. So I went to,
Oh, okay, in Cappadocia.
yep.
Yes.
And so I went to Turkey to do the research, and the story starts out in an airplane landing in Istanbul, and we go through the whole part of the book in Istanbul. They go back and forth between Istanbul and the archaeological site where they're working. Annie is joining her boyfriend Ty. Ty Egan is in all the books, but she goes to join him because he's a graduate student, and they're doing a project on linking the DNA that they find in the bones at an archaeological dig to the bones of humans in Africa, because they wanted to see how the human diaspora migrated. So there's DNA science in this book, but there's a lot of travelogue in this book, because Turkey's a fascinating place.
Oh,
an
my gosh.
Absolutely fascinating place. So they're in caves, and they're in I don't know if you've been to Istanbul, but there's a place called the Cistern, which was
right,
the
sure.
original water source.
Right.
And so there's a lot of adventure in this. And
you got to go to Turkey to research a book. That's always good.
yes, yes. And my accountant always says, all those trips you take them off on your income tax, because that's part of your books. And it's true.
Absolutely.
So, but what happens is that there's skullduggery going on at the archaeological dig, and of course that's what has to be solved.
Oh my gosh.
But this was a lot of fun to write.
Oh, I bet.
There's humor in this book, more so than in the others, because there's a pair of twins in the book. They're the children of the manager of the dig, and they're about 11, 12 years old, and they are hysterical. The book starts with them, and they actually are pivotal in solving the mystery, but they insist that Annie use a Ouija board to channel Nancy Drew to find out who did it. So there's a lot of humor in it.
That's adorable.
Yeah, and
I love that.
a lot of adventure.
And great travel, because it's wonderful to read about other places and to know you got to be there in order to research.
Yeah, it was an interesting
Is that
trip.
how we choose what you're going to write about next? Where do I want to go?
Well, that's true, but a lot of people do that. A lot of authors have themes like that. I have one author, her theme is pretty much zoos. And then I have another author, Little Miss History, and every one of her books visits a national park or a monument.
Wonderful.
And her husband does the artwork, and they're really wonderful books.
Oh my gosh.
So there are themes.
There are themes. Okay. Now, where did you get to go?
Oh, that's Long Island.
Oh, that's no fun for the travel, but it's a great book. So tell us a little bit about
this book takes place actually in two times. It takes place in 1943 and the present.
Okay.
And back in 1943, Annie's great-grandmother was a WASP, a Woman's Air Service pilot during World War II, and she was a test pilot for Grumman Aviation. and a plane crashes in 1943, but it is not found until 2011, 2010, 2014, whatever it was in the book. And when they find the plane, they find the remains of the pilot. It's not her great-grandmother, but they find a note that was written by her great-grandmother. So they want to solve what happened to this plane, because it's a Navy plane, so it's NCIS.
Gotcha.
So I bring NCIS in, and then they track down Annie's mother, because she's the oldest living relative of this great-grandmother, and Annie has who has had a contentious relationship with Mama, reconciles, and they work together on finding out what happened in 1943. There's a ghost, okay, and there are, I dedicated the book to, I guess, the most important women in my life: my mother, my favorite cousin, my favorite aunt, and my father's girlfriend after my mother died. And I called them my muses, and they were all contemporaries at that time.
Wow.
So I based some of the characters in the book on them. That was fun to write. I did my research in the Cradle of Aviation archives, and they haven't digitized everything. So you go in there, and it's like back when I went to college, going into the stacks and all that smelly paper stuff.
Yes, yes.
But, you know, it's one thing to get the plans for the Avenger airplane online, but it's another thing to actually open the blueprints. And that was, I felt like I had gone back in time. It was a fun book to write.
You know, hearing your enthusiasm and the fun of the research. You're traveling, you're in the museum, you're looking at blueprints. I mean, my gosh, who wouldn't want to be a writer listening to you?
Yeah, well, you know, people say to me, how do you cure writer's block? And I always say, whatever your book is about, it takes place somewhere.
Right.
Research the setting, because you're going to find things that can actually move your plot along.
Oh my gosh. I love the fact that you've actually gone there to the locations or to the museums, to the archives, looking things over. You know, too many people think in this day and age, well, we have Google. I can find out what I want. But there's nothing like you said, opening those blueprints.
Yeah, reading on Wikipedia or some article or what, it's just not the same. I mean, you really get a feel for, because setting to me is like a character. My settings are characters. And, you know, to be in the place, the smell, the sights, you know, even just the lighting, you can translate that into description, which is really what draws readers in, I think.
Absolutely. And a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me, with the Annie Tillery Mysteries, who are your favorite readers? Like, what types of people love these books?
Well, young readers, anywhere from, I would say, advanced elementary up into maybe 15. And then women my age and men my age. I have a couple of men who have read the books and actually love them, especially male teachers.
Really?
Yes, because you know, they like the story. They're always looking for stories that they think are going to be attractive to their students.
Sure.
And my favorite experience with the books was I had a teacher from Garden City, and she bought a classroom set of my books, and she had a literature circle. It was a 5th grade class, and the kids picked the book that they wanted to read, and then they sent me questions, and then I went into the classroom and talked to the kids. And I've saved the questions because they're so insightful.
Right.
I mean, these are 5th grade readers.
Yeah.
And so you have to realize really how smart kids are today and how critical they are of, and I don't mean that in a bad way, they're able to read a book and really see things in the book that you wouldn't think an elementary school student could see, but they do.
Fantastic. Now tell me something before we get to your newest book. Is Annie Tillery going to have any other mysteries?
Yes, Annie, I have a book that it's a great plot. I don't know whether I should say this, but I'm going to. In 3 of the books, I let one of the bad guys get away.
Oop.
And I didn't mean to. I mean, I meant for them to get away, but I didn't mean for this to be a habit. But I have 3 people who got away, and of course that's always good at the end of the story.
Oh, sure, because it leaves a little window open.
Thinking to myself, I know how to tie them together.
Yes.
And so these three culprits, and they're not nice people,
Oh,
are going to come together in this last book. Well, I don't know if it's the last book, in this next book.
in this next book, right?
And,
Let's leave a door open.
Yeah, so yeah, there's an Annie Tillery on the way. So
Now, as a writer, how do you know? Because people who want to be you, and they say 90% of the population wants to write a book. So basically, all of our viewers, they want to be you right now. That's the truth of it. And they're saying, how do you know that there's another book? What do you hear in your head? What inspired, like?
well, for me, it's really been kind of easy because, you know, just like that show Law and Order, I'm giving them a lot of plugs, but just like that show, ripped from the headlines.
Right.
You know, there's always stories that you can take and manipulate, more or less.
Right, right.
But teaching forensic science gives me a lot of fields where I can come up with kind of packages of evidence and then build a plot around it.
I'm so glad you said that about ripping from the headlines, because if I just look at today's news, you look at some of these headlines, you say, oh, I bet there's a story behind that. And maybe there is, or maybe you could create the story behind that.
Right, right.
You know, and
Well,
that's what you're
my
doing.
definition of a writer is it's a person who, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, you have something that you want to tell an audience. You want to share it, whether it's how to, you know, put a refrigerator together, or if it's just a story of your family life.
Right, right.
That's one of the projects that I would love to do. I'd like to tell my family story, and you know, not get it published, just
right,
leave
just
it to
to
my
have it.
son.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he and I went to Europe when he was 16, and I kept a journal, and it's very funny because he was 16, and I would also like to rewrite that a bit, you know. So, but I'm busy with.
You're busy. You're busy. So now you took a little turn away from Annie Tillery, and suddenly the Buccaneers of St. Frederick Island came out.
That book came from a writing course. I decided to take another writing course.
Oh, good for you.
And the teacher would give us prompts every week. And then I've always wanted to write about kids in Catholic school because I went to all Catholic schools. And actually, the experiences were interesting or very funny. So what I did was I decided to take it back to 1947.
Okay.
Because this is when I was in Catholic school. It's 47 or 46. I'm pretty sure it's 47. And so I created a group of kids who are in a Catholic school on a somewhat remote island. It's not remote in that you can't get back and forth, but it's not easy to get back and forth. So the island has one Catholic school, which functions as a health clinic, church, Catholic school. And then there's a community of fishermen and people who live in beach shacks, and then there's a community of Native Americans. So I brought the three of them together in a plot, but what happens with the kids is that they form a club called the Buccaneers of St. Frederick Island. And they're raising money to buy toys for kids poor kids in the city, whatever city, I never mentioned what city it is. And the money's stolen. So the priests and the nuns tell them, well, just offer it up to God. It's you know, don't bother solving it. And no. They don't want any part of that. So they decide to solve this mystery. And of course, they get involved in all kinds of stuff. And there is a very interesting plot, again, that's related to the history after World War II. So, and I kind of really, in my own heart, love that time period because my memories of my childhood go back to that. So I wrote the prologue, and I talked about a story about my father. And then also what was fun was trying to describe using a rotary phone and a party line. Because, you know, and again, I have to tell you, I really like to avoid technology in my books because I think it's distracting. I mean, they use cell phones and whatnot, but still in all, they're not, you know, tied to them. So here, we have a remote island, a ferry, a printing press that goes back to 1883, and a rotary phone. And my main character, whose name is Lily, but her code name is Sprocket. And she's dialing the number of her friend, and she's you know, describing putting your finger in the hole and waiting for it to return. And then she said, "Hasn't anybody thought of push buttons?" Which of course is what came next.
Which is what came next. I remember.
And maybe she was the one who invented them. I don't know.
Exactly.
But I have another one coming, and the reason why there's another one coming was because I put this into a contest. And I didn't win first, second, or third, but I came up honorable mentions. And when you do, then they have a pool of reviewers. So they sent me all of these reviews, and the reviews were good. And some of them said, "Can't wait till she writes another one."
Oh, wonderful.
And I thought to myself, what do you think we do? Grind these out like a pasta machine? You know,
well, I mean, it sounds a little bit like Yes.
no.
It sounds a little bit like Yes.
Takes me almost 2 years to write a book. It does.
Well, you know, Gone with the Wind took 10.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of books, great classics and bestsellers take a long time, but 2 years is, I mean, 2 years actively, you know, sitting there every day and writing something. But one of the things that I did that I'm very proud of is I have this book called Making a Mystery with Annie Tillery, and it's a teacher book. I took the Madonna Ghost, and at the end of every chapter there are author's notes, and I talk about how I created the characters, how I researched the setting, some tips on writing. I even put some websites in there and activities for kids revolving around the evidence. And so it's, if you're teaching literature to like 8th graders or whatnot, that's a great resource book.
Oh, fantastic. I didn't even know. So you're getting things done. Yeah, don't.
Oh, yeah. I did it with Fairy Chimneys as well. And I was working on Girl with Pencil Drawing, but somehow or other got diverted. I think I went to that book.
You got diverted. Well, there's a whole lot of things here to divert you, that's for sure. I'm fascinated. After all of these books, you went back and took another writing course. I loved that you said that.
Oh, yeah.
That you're constantly growing as a writer, even after all of these successes. And that was what led to this book.
Yes, yeah, it did. I mean, there's also a couple of other ideas that I came up with in that course. In fact, I got a short piece published in the Fire Island newspaper because it's a story about a deer, a group of deer, and it's a doe and her fawn in the middle of winter on Long Island from the deer's point of view.
Oh!
Yeah, it's very different.
Very different.
It's called The Hard Crossing. And the hard crossing, of course, is a road.
Exactly. Ooh, ooh.
No, I don't kill them off.
Please don't. I
Not
can't.
me,
I
no.
can't deal with another
No,
Bambi.
but it's really from the deer's point of view.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Where's that? That's not on our table here.
No, it's not. It's on my computer somewhere.
It's on your computer
It's
somewhere?
archived in the Fire Island News.
My gosh. So all of this writing, what would you say to people who want to get started?
I would say take a course in writing. I would also say write down your ideas as they come. I would say join writers groups.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of writers groups on Long Island who will allow people in who have not published, and find a group that will critique your work in a positive way. There are a lot of them. Writers Guild is one of them.
Yes.
A lot of writers who have success claim that their work there at the Writers Guild really helped them to create something that was, saleable. Also, I would say create a Facebook page or a blog and start talking about your book and talking about books you like. Start a conversation going, because you'll have to go on social media, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Some writers will say, "We'll write 1,000 words a day." I can't do that. I just can't do that.
Not a write with a gun to your head kind of a person.
I can't, no. And but I did a lot of my writing on buses, trains,
Really?
airplanes.
I guess when it hits.
No, it's when I need to be separated from my home and my people and my pets, and I need to be. Airplanes are the best because you're up there in the sky, completely, I mean, the guy next to me is connected by his cell phone or whatever, but I am completely separated from everything and everybody.
Wow.
I do that in the car too. I never turn my cell phone on in the car, except to find this place. And so that's how I write.
So tell me, the dream trip, if you were going to set a book someplace interesting so you can have that, business write-off for a vacation, where are you going to research? Where or what?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've been to Africa, I've been to China.
Maybe you're digging through the basement of the Smithsonian. Maybe you're trekking in Nepal. Where's the next one going to be?
Yeah, I think Tibet would probably be it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're hardy.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Tibet when I went to China, but they discouraged me because they kept saying the altitude sickness was so bad.
Okay.
But I probably would have been okay if I had gone. But it would have been probably Tibet. Sometimes I think Russia. Lapland.
Okay.
I'm into cold.
I see that. I see that, although this was set on an island.
Yeah, but it's not. The island, I never say where the island is.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And people keep trying to pin me down that it's Fire Island. It's not Fire Island.
Okay.
I mean, even if you
Right,
read
right.
the book, you know
Yeah.
it's not Fire Island.
No, no.
And I did think in terms of the Pacific Northwest, but then there's also Maine. It could
Right.
be any of those places.
Okay.
Because it's St. Frederick Island, and then you have to take the ferry to another island, which is called Maine.
Gotcha. There's
And
that.
then that's not. It's
That's
like
not Maine.
it's like it is here. That's not really the mainland. It's another island. My son, who lives in Maryland now, calls this the New York Archipelago
Yep. I get that.
because it's all. It is all.
It is
island.
all. Well, I hope that you get to Tibet, and we'll be following whatever comes next in the Annie Tillery series. And now that we know that there's a new Buccaneers coming out, we'll keep our tabs on you.
Okay.
Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us, and thanks for the inspiration.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
I
watching.
enjoyed it.
We're just books up on a shelf. Try to understand this if you can.